Support for this episode is provided by Mohawk Finishing Products. I've been using Mohawk Finishing Products since 1986. Click on the link in the description below and visit Mohawk today. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the shop. Since getting the saw stuff, I've had a lot of questions as to what am I going to do with the Powermatic, and it's going to stay right here in the shop. I'll be running the two saws face to face. The majority of the work will be done with the saw stop, and I'll set up the Powermatic with specialty blades, dado blades, molding cutters, things like that. Today I'll be bridging the gap and joining the two saws together. I've already added a filler piece to the back rail of the Powermatic, and I'm about to do the same thing over here on the saw stop. The filler piece sits on the back rail of the table saw and is attached with a number 12 1-inch screw and a washer. When I fill the gap between the saws, I'm filling it with an L shape to create an extension on the left side of the Powermatic. So I built this support to go over the motor cover and support the table extension. I'm making the tabletop that will join the saws together out of 3/4 inch plywood and 1/2 inch MDF. The 3/4 inch plywood goes down first, then the 1/2 inch MDF, and the reason for that is every few years or so I can replace the 1/2 inch MDF at very little cost and have a brand new surface. I'll start by using the circular saw to cut the 3/4 inch plywood to length a little heavy. Next, I'll use the table saw to make the long rip, and I'll stop at the line. I'll use the circular saw again for the next cut, stop at the line, and finish the cut with the handsaw. Now I can drop the plywood in place and draw a few lines for the finish cuts. Now I can use the plywood as a pattern to make the 1/2 inch MDF top. After rough cutting the MDF to size, I'll use a flush cut bit in the router to make a perfect match. Next, I'll use a roundover bit to soften the edge. Okay, well, I am really happy with the way this turned out. I'm excited to have 2 saws in the shop. I think it looks great, and I think it's definitely going to add to the function and increase workflow. And it really doesn't take up any more space, or not that much more space, than my old table saw outfeed setup. So a few people have commented on Instagram as to why do you need 2 table saws, and you really don't. I've never had 2 table saws in the shop, but if you have 2 saws, you may as well use them. And I couldn't see myself getting rid of the Powermatic, and don't think I could sell it for much. And the idea of always having at least 1 saw working is very appealing. So if anything were to happen to either of the saws, I still have a working saw until the other one gets repaired. So that's definitely appealing. For the most part, the Powermatic will be set up with a dado blade or molding cutter or something like that. A few things I didn't cover: the channels that I cut in the MDF for the miter gauge. I cut them a little bit wider than the slots that are in the cast iron tops, and that's just to make sure that the sled or the miter gauge doesn't get hung up. The finish on the MDF is Mohawk's waterborne pre-catalyst lacquer. I used 3 coats, sanding in between each coat. And when I added the top, I used business cards for a little micro adjusting to make sure I had a perfect transition between the cast iron top and the filler piece in the center here. So you can see the sled works perfect. It's a perfect transition on this side. So if you're pushing from this side, it needs to be perfect here and here. And that way nothing gets hung up when you're pushing material through the saw. So again, really excited with the way this turned out. I'm looking forward to building some furniture. Next week I will be building a mobile base for my thickness planer. So I hope that you'll tune in for that. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Before you start your next project, click on the link in the description for my professional woodworking plans and build a piece of furniture that will last a lifetime.